Hello, my name is Ryan Parrish, and I'm here doing my case presentation. So the case that I chose was the Stephen Avery case, which is a pretty well-known um, case. It's out of Wisconsin. There is a show on Netflix based off this called Making a Murderer. And one of the reasons I chose this case is because one of the previous criminal justice classes I took at a different college, we actually watched the show in class and then analyzed it. Like that was our class, was diving into this case. So it was it's a homicide case. In the end of everything, Stephen Avery was charged with first-degree murder, so it was a felony. There was basically two suspects, and then obviously the victim. The two suspects were Stephen Avery and Brendan Massey, and then the victim was a lady by the name of Teresa Halbach. So the version that I'm going to give is the prosecution side. And I'll note some things on the defense side. This case, if you know anything about it, is a mess, and it's been a mess for a while now. But anyways, so Stephen Avery was originally in jail for a separate sexual-related crime. There was some DNA evidence that came to light that ended up getting him exonerated after being in prison for 20 years. After he was released from prison, he was basically paraded around as, all the reasons why our system fails and why it fails miserably. And there was even a law, I think, that was passed he was exonerated in 2003, and I think the law was passed in like 2004, 2005, somewhere in there, that helped people that had been wrongfully accused of crimes to help people get exonerated. So this case in particular, a lady by the name of Teresa Halbach goes and visits Stephen Avery about some business-related things, and she's never seen again. She goes missing. Her car was later found on the Stephen Avery property. Stephen Avery owned a salvage yard kind of business, and the car was found under some brush. It was very clear that somebody was trying to hide the vehicle. In the case, the Making a Murder documentary is from the defense perspective. It's as some people even call it a hit piece on prosecutors. It's solely focused on the defense and the lawyers. They interview Stephen Avery constantly through this process and get his viewpoints on things. And depending on which side you listen to, there's a lot of discrepancies that the prosecution and the people that investigated the crime, things that they didn't do. And I think if the police would have better followed their policies, then some evidence that was missed the first time wouldn't have been missed. So, for example, there was some evidence in Stephen Avery's trailer that was found later that tied Teresa as being in his house, and that was not picked up on the first time. I believe it was the keys to the car that was found. And so the prosecution was able to say, well, how did the keys get in her house, and how is the car on your property, but yet she's nowhere to be found? And you want us to believe that her keys are in your house, the car is on your property, but yet you had nothing to do with this crime. And of course, the defense is playing you know, well, you planted this evidence. You had this evidence, or you found this evidence, or you pulled it from someone who you really know committed the crime, and you planted it on him. That was their version. But, of course, the prosecution is, saying that they're trying to investigate this from the book, by the book. He was, and this trial went on for a long time. Eventually, he was arrested in 2005, and he was convicted in 2007, and was found guilty of first-degree murder, among some other things. In terms of deterrent, I think it's interesting to point out, and I pointed it out at the beginning of this, he was found guilty of a crime. Yes, he didn't commit it, but this guy has a rap sheet. That exoneration aside, he's been arrested before. And so it brings to light the whole, well, can this guy be deterred? And I think the answer is no. I think this guy is what I would call a career criminal. I think no matter where we put him or what he does, he's going to become some type of criminal offender. And he's shown that. Of course, jumping to murder, looking at his rap sheet, it was a lot of, I think, property crimes. And he took the jump from that to first-degree murder, which I think is a stretch. But I don't think that there was a deterrent to keep Steven Avery away from committing crimes. Again, do I think that he would be committing the crime of first-degree murder? Not necessarily, but he was going to be committing crimes. How I would handle the case, so I would pick the prosecution side. If my choices are prosecution or defense, I'm going with the prosecution side, because the evidence that they did have, no matter where you think it came from or how they got it, there is evidence that directly ties Teresa Halbach to Steven Avery at the time that she disappears. There's a burn barrel where they put different things in there that suggest that, it was personal property of her. Of course, them finding the keys to her car in his house. I believe they found it behind a dresser. It's been a minute since I've seen the show. But as I was reading up on it in preparedness to do this, of course, they found the car, some other things that happened. Something else I want to point out, Brendan Massey, who I mentioned earlier, he's the other suspect offender in this case. As the prosecution, the interview that was done with him is not an interview that I would have done, and I would have instructed investigators under me to not interview him the way that he was actually interviewed. And that's because they pulled him out of class, and the investigators basically told him, we have all this evidence on you. We know what happened, or we know that you were involved, and we know where it happened. We just need the why. Walk us through how this happened. So he clearly, under pressure, explains the story, and I assume, and I think, and I've thought this for a while now, the story that he told about her being handcuffed to the bed and all of that, them sexually assaulting her and then killing her, I think it was all made up on the spot by Brendan Massey. That's my opinion, because working with kids, I can tell you, if you have a group of kids who are doing something they know they're not supposed to be doing, they know it. On the flip side of that, they also know what they haven't done. And so, but they're very easy to, hey, I know you did this. You better tell me right now why this was done. And they're going to make stuff up, even if they had absolutely nothing to do with this. So I don't think, and I'm still not sure if he had something to do with it completely, but I don't think what Brendan Massey said is what happened. I don't think. I think personally he helped dispose of the body in the car, but I don't think he had any actual involvement in the physical murder of Teresa Halbach. And I've believed that for a while now. But like I said, just all the evidence that's built up against Steven Avery, it would be hard to, in my opinion, it would be hard to convince a jury that he did not do this. Whereas the prosecution, and I hear prosecutors say this frequently, I don't have to 100% prove that he did this. I just have to prove that beyond a reasonable doubt, he was the one that did this. And I don't think things should be that way. I think if we're going to throw someone in prison the rest of their life and basically waste their life, and yes, there are people I think belong in prison for the rest of their life, we should have to 100% prove that they committed this crime. Not that, we've got an 80-20 shot. Another reason I wouldn't want to be defense in this, I think Americans have this notion of if you're in a courtroom, you've done something. The notion of innocent until proven guilty, I think, does not go very far with people nowadays. And so I think even though through jury selections and jury questioning and all this stuff, I still think people are saying, well, he's in the courtroom, so he must have done something. So let's make sure he has jail time. Or this guy's not a very good person, clearly. So maybe he didn't commit this specific crime. But odds are he's committed other crimes. So let's throw him in prison for this because we have the opportunity. That's how I think things. Not all the time, but I do think that's sometimes how things happen. So, again, just a quick overview. Steven Avery and Brendan Massey. Steven Avery more so murdered Teresa Halbach in Wisconsin in the early 2000s after Steven Avery was exonerated for a sexual crime that was committed in the 1980s. Long, drawn-out court process. Evidence that the defense argues was planted. The prosecution claims, no, we just missed it the first time. Keep in mind the salvage yard that they're searching is huge. They get all this done. He's found guilty. And that's that. So I believe there's 2 seasons of Making a Murder on Netflix now. Season 3 is, I guess, rumored to be on the way sometime soon. I don't know how true that is. It's supposed to be about his appeals process and things. Steven Avery from day one says, I'm innocent. But, everyone's got their own opinion on this case. So that is my case presentation for Steven Avery. Thank you.